So today we're going to introduce some people that I've, in a very short period of time, learned to admire in terms of their technologies and their approach to headphones and speakers. And Mike is right. You know, the AMT technology has been around for, geez, almost as long as some of us, and so it's kind of an interesting technology. I find that the AMT technology that we're experiencing from HEDD is actually done pretty well. So when we were planning this particular, August event, as we always have one here, the Zoom idea was a great idea, and it gave me a chance to maybe show you guys some of the HEDD technologies. I'm not a huge fan necessarily of powered speakers, but right from the very moment that I powered these particular speakers, I don't know if you can see them behind me a little bit. It's a pretty interesting tower, and we've been doing a lot of comparisons with it, and it's actually a very, very brilliant speaker, one that I've grown pretty fond of. Maybe if we're all lucky, they'll send a few pair over here for free, and we can all put them in our houses. But it's actually a speaker that from the moment I actually turned it on and actually got a chance to listen to it, I was pretty impressed and thought maybe some of you folks might actually want to get a chance to hear it. So to clarify a few things, however, the source is not by appointment only. We do have moments on Saturdays where we might be overcrowded, and we might ask people to either come back or wait for a few moments while we kind of rotate the groups that come in. But we don't allow more than 10 people at a time in the showrooms. But we're not a traditional retail application, so that's not generally a problem, and most people can just walk in and come and listen to the headphones, come and listen to the speakers, whatever it is that they want to hear. But today, I'm really pleased that we can bring Klaus into this, and we have his son, I think, on here. And
you can hear me, everybody? With a few phrases, tell you how I got connected to the air motion transformer. When I was a young student, I learned to know a speaker that outraged me very much. That was the ESS7, not far from your place, of course, in Orange County in Sacramento. That's not Orange County anymore, right?
No.
And I found these speakers totally out of proportion. I looked at the drivers and I looked at the resulting sound, and I was so impressed that I started to become interested in how loudspeakers actually are made and what is important for the sound. And so evidently it was not the most expensive drivers, but these ESS people show that with cheap drivers you could do excellent results. Later on, Oscar Heil joined ESS, as you do know, and then I was confronted with the AMT idea, and rather soon tried to make the original AMT smaller and more compatible with normal dome tweeters. So making it small, making it a non-dipolar device, and to make it applicable to normal loudspeakers. And that was the original AMT tweeter idea, the way I proposed to do it. Oscar, whom I visited a few times in San Francisco, he's in, where was he located anyway? And he was not fond, he didn't like the idea of the closed back of the tweeter. But as it's clear in the meantime, it's more practical and a more common approach of how to make a better speaker with the AMT principle that can be used in normal hi-fi loudspeakers. So then later on, I applied it with the Adam Audio company that some of you might be familiar with. And I made mainly studio monitors with that kind of tweeter. But of course, the clarity and the transient response that these tweeters allowed are a desirable thing for high-end audio as well. And my original work was for hi-fi companies. And with the newest thing we developed, namely the tower mains, I think it makes especially sense to look out whether the high-end audio people are happy with the sound as much as the professional audio people are. And that's the reason why we are here tonight. So far from the AMT and my own way with and to the AMT. And a few more words about the tower mains. It is my try to make kind of best speakers. So what one needs is diaphragm area. What one should have is a symmetrical geometry of woofers, mid-ranges, and a central tweeter. And in the meantime, I had learned something about active speakers that really puts them in front of passive concepts. I know that the high-end audio scenery is filled with wonderful and good, very well-made passive loudspeakers. However, if you look at it from a technical point of view, the short pieces of wire between the power amps for woofer, tweeter, and mid-range in active speakers is a better solution than all these wonderful cables and the golden and copper and whatever surfaces you do have. From a technical point, a 10 or 15 centimeter piece of wire, of a good wire, is superior to longer wires that you need for passive speakers, and it is superior to all the limitations that are introduced by passive crossover parts like capacitors and coils and resistors. So the chances to make a better speaker are actually bigger if you choose an active approach. Whether you succeed and whether it's really sounding better, it's a different story. You can fail with each and every principle. You have to do a good work for the individual product primarily, of course. The tower mains were born in a way because I wanted to make a successor of all these big original pro audio monitors. Many of you guys will know that in the older, very good studios in Hollywood and elsewhere, there were huge boxes, huge monitors from Uray or from Tannoy and GBL that had big woofers and that impressed people by their dynamics. And they impressed me by their dynamics. And although the voices and a single violin out of these horn-loaded systems was painful, their dynamics impressed so much that one was inclined to forgive them what they did with the voices and the violins. The idea was to make a speaker that could develop that kind of dynamics, but still remain a first-class mid-range speaker as well. So I calculated how much air can be moved by two 18-inch woofers. That's something you find in the very big monitor systems. And to observe that a closed system from a technical point and a reproduction point of view is a better system than the reflex or ported systems. And so I put together in the speaker that you saw on the background, 8 9-inch woofers in the closed systems. 4 of them, 8 of them you can see in the front, another 8 fired to the backside. All of them are closed, all of them are active, and each and every of those 8 woofers has 300 watts of power, resulting in 2.4 kilowatts in base powering. And you audiophile guys are used to the most exclusive and most the best engineered power amps, something that can be recognized by the excellent technical figures you have in the famous brands. However, the amplifiers you find in the tower mains have the same values, like 0.0005, 3 zeros or 5 distortion from 1 watt to 500 watts, all in all having figures in noise and distortion and linearity that are totally comparable to the most exclusive high-end audio amplifiers. And so there is no disadvantage in comparison to the audiophile systems. Second, I wanted to have a symmetrical geometry where a tweeter in the middle and mid-range and woofers are symmetrical, because then you can have a dispersion characteristic that avoids reflections from the floor and from the ceiling, And for the accuracy of the like room information or ambience, you have an advantage that the ear has more direct sound than it is possible with the classical geometries and mid-range woofer tweeter designs. So I took the best available industrial amplifiers. I made the right geometry. We have a more perfect AMT tweeter, and all the woofers and mid-ranges have very stable honeycomb cones. Very, not only stable, but hard cones they are. These have the disadvantage that their frequency response, if they go away in the 1 to 3 kilohertz area, is not as smooth, but the impulse response of hard or stiff diaphragms naturally is somewhat better, and it's better to tame a gifted child than to just do the normal thing. That means we have very stiff cones and sophisticated crossovers to tame them and to make a good music that especially comes to life if you have transient or spatial kind of information that is related to very good transient response of a speaker. The soft sounding speakers normally has a difficulty to represent the 3 or 2-dimensional room where the recording took place. So it is a very old attitude of mine to have stiff cones, to tame them and to arrive at a better overall result. So in the tower mains, everything is put together that is possible. The most diaphragm area you have, the most tamed diaphragms, the symmetrical geometry, and a no compromise power section, together with hopefully well-made crossover filter section in this loudspeaker, so that you can drive it with an iPhone if you want to. But you can, of course, take a good audiophile preamp to have the very best results out of it. And what I can say after the presentation of the tower mains for 1 or 2 years, that in most of the cases, people were positively surprised by the 3-dimensional impression they got from the speakers and by the accuracy, by the pure accuracy. And I, for the first time, heard Jason talking about the speakers, and I'm happy to add him to that list of people who really enjoyed that kind of sound. And I hope we'll find some more people. So if there are questions for the concept or for the technical details, I will be happy to answer them. To come to headphones now, that headphones from a general point of view became so important, and that such a huge community of interested people demand and buy more and more expensive headphones, raised the idea to try to make an AMT-driven headphone. Even Oscar Heil himself already once made that approach, but considered it not to be successful. When we made the first AMT headphones, it turned out that the frequency response was awful. There was no mid-range, there was only bass and treble. And it needed the idea of the so-called variable velocity transformation. That means that we have a diaphragm, an AMT diaphragm, that has a variable geometry in the folding of the diaphragm. I presume everybody is familiar with the AMT, I guess. That led to an even frequency response for a headphone. So that was the decisive idea to overcome the limitations that occur for the air motion transformer principle. Sound-wise, we were happy with it. From the technical point of view, efficiency of these headphones is not an optimum, but as the final sound results were convincing enough, we hoped for people who take the time and the effort to have a good headphone amplifiers. And together with that, I think the headphone is an interesting step into the future of headphones. And the results we got within a few months after publishing the unit, we are more than inviting. That was a good move, as it's evident per today.
We also had to learn how to be a headphone manufacturer, because one of the core things that we do is keeping the entire manufacturing process in Berlin. So we have quite a big space over here with currently 8 people working full-time in assembling. both the speakers and the headphones. And yeah, we're slowly realizing how much potential there is for us to get into the whole headphone business. And obviously now our biggest challenge is to, over the years, build a portfolio of headphones that cover, that widens potentially our audience as well, because from the sound perspective, doing an open headphone is always the best thing to do. But then obviously we're very interested in getting a little closer to our core community. Traditionally, this is the pro audio community, where people record music, where people work in audio post-production and, share a musical experience in one space, which is obviously not something you could do very well with open back headphones, for an example. So we're thinking in all sorts of directions at the moment. And but Headphone One was a breakthrough for us, also for our understanding of who we are and where we want to go from here.
What were the challenges in getting AMT to work well in full range?
Yeah, what I found by simply enlarging the geometry of the tweeter and making a headphone out of it was an awful frequency response. So it didn't work at the first glance. And by trying to tame it, to make a linear frequency response, we had the idea to have a geometry in these folds. The AMT does not have a cone that moves backwards and forwards as you are used to with voice coil or planar membranes. The AMT is a folded diaphragm where the air is squeezed out 4 times as fast as the diaphragm itself is moving. So that's the secret or the advantage of the AMT, to have a more immediate acceleration of the air. So these folds influence the frequency response. And it turned out that we found the right geometry for the bass, and that up from 5 to 6 kilohertz, it was nice again. And in between, we had a big hole, like 8 to 10 dBs. So it was not linear at all. And I changed the geometry of the folds to a variable geometry. That means the folds varied in width and depth. And so I managed to achieve a linear frequency response. And the elder colleagues of this meeting here will remember when Oscar Heil's AMT came up, or when our Adam audio monitors came up, that the most common denominator for the sound was clarity, transient response, or to be fast, as it sometimes is expressed in the audiophile world. And this advantage of being more vivid and having better transient response, that's something that actually translated with the headphones. And the problems we found we could solve with this variable geometry of the folds. That's what we call the VVT, or variable velocity transform. And that's where we have applied a patent for. That allowed to make a frequency response as flat as you find it from our competitors, from IDs, Focal, or elsewhere, but yet maintaining the freshness and the airiness that is inherent in the air motion transformer principle. So that seems to be successful at the moment, yeah.
That's great. Another idea on the headphones was the comfort or fit difficult to tackle?
Yeah, the inherent problem with an air motion transformer for headphones is the fact that now you have a huge magnetic, gap that you have to fill with magnetic field lines. It is a much bigger problem compared to the voice coil or planar situation, where you can put the magnets very near to the wires that they have to accelerate. In the case of the air motion transformers, due to the fact that they are folded into the third dimension from the listener, we have the volume of the gap that we have to fill with induction is much bigger. That results in more magnets and more metal plates and white. And so we arrived at like 700 gram plus something. which nobody of us likes, but that is a price to be paid for the air motion transformer principle. And the other thing is that it's a bigger headphone, but what we found is that if we displace the diaphragm from the ear, you can influence the spatial reproduction quality of it. And this headphone is only made for the optimum in sound, and it is a little bit heavier and a little bit more bulky than it would be comfortable or normal. But from an audiophile point of view, we did what we found to be the best sound. That's the reason behind the bulkiness and the weight.
This is the early prototype. And you wearing the final. Just a quick view, like this was how we started it. Basically a very large AMT tweeter with no extras. Just wanted to show it for historical relevance and reasons.
MDF based, yeah.
I've got another couple of questions that just came in. Klaus, could you take a look at this one? You mentioned the efficiency is fairly low. Is this of the headphones? Is this still the case? And what type of headphone amp is needed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do not have a complete or correct answer, because then I would have to try out all the amps with the AMT head with our headphone, which I didn't do. What I can indicate is that we have a 42 ohm practically a resistive load or impedance, so it is more harmless for a speaker, for an amplifier, compared to a voice coil driven speaker, where you always have impedance variations that are due to phase aberrations in the transducer. But my more general recommendation only can be, please have at least 1 watt in the amplifier, and if you have between 2 and 5, it is advisable if you tend, or if you like to hear very loud. The the capability to take up 5 watts is certainly there. So you may not be curious about a 5 watt headphone amplifier to destroy the headphone. That's what you want to have. And about the quality differences, audio differences between headphone amplifiers, that's something I wonder how much it actually is the case. We tried it out in the lab, and it's leading to internal considerations what we can do for a headphone application one day. But for the moment, I only can recommend to try out everything that at least has 1 watt or more into 42 ohms of impedance, which we do have with the headphones. The data that you normally find about sensibility, it is totally confusing, because if you have a sensitivity of 87, 89, 90 dBs, then you are not told into which impedance that runs and what kind of power consumption it means for the headphone amplifiers. This is something you had to calculate as soon as you know a voltage sensitivity, and if you do know your impedance, and if you do know the power rating, the pure current power rating of your headphone amplifiers. So it needs to be tried out, and I'm glad, of course, to hear that normal headphone amplifiers do a sufficient job compared to voice coil driven systems. The sensitivity or efficiency of these AMT headphones are lower. But with all these wonderful headphone amplifiers on the market, it should not be a problem. That's true.
Any thoughts on making the driver housing lighter itself?
Yes, each and every one. And we have a number of ladies who are especially experienced in making the somewhat critical AMT diaphragms. Simply the best colleagues I had at Adam Audio are now working at HEDD, and to have people who really do this job carefully, it's not an advertising of mine. It's important for the overall quality that we deliver. It means handwork, and it needs careful handwork. And the ladies who do that have been watchmakers before. So that's
Klaus. The question was about making the driver housing lighter.
So sorry, whether we make it in-house, I understood. Sorry, yeah. No, we are working on this, of course, because the story is we have to take in each and every time Chris talks to me or one of the customers. It's not easy. We tried to make it light, and there is no quick solution for 200-300 gram less. but we will show up one day with less white, but please don't ask me for the numbers yet.
What is the headphone cable material made of?
That's in a way the normal OFC copper that you know from other cables as well. There is no significant advantage as far as we can realize from the market of cables.
Was it chosen was it specifically chosen for sound profile?
To be honest, not. That would mean that we had to make all the comparisons. We did a few of them when we choose a cable that looked reasonable to us, and we have good results, but I'm not able to compare or to judge all these different cables. I cannot.
Yeah.
Sorry.
We have one other thing on the speaker line itself. Is this the flagship model that is available here? And are there smaller speakers in the line? Any
yes,
plans?
there are. Yeah. It's actually, we started with smaller speakers, smaller active analog speakers. Currently we have two-way systems, 5-inch bass, 7-inch bass with AMT. They're called Type 5 and Type 7, and then there are two 3-way systems as well. One is a very compact system that we sell a lot actually into sophisticated home studios where people make music, record music, but more and more also into audiophile homes for multi-channel setups. And then there's a flagship 3-way system called Type 30, which is kind of a extended version of the other model that I explained. And so there are currently four speaker models that very much cater into the world that we originally come from, which is the world of pro audio, broadcast audio, and home studios.
Good. This question is not fair but it's interesting. What if you were going to demonstrate these headphones to me, what music would really showcase the best of your headphones, HEDD phones?
Yeah.
Is it a question to you? Okay.
No, go ahead. We can both answer.
Yeah. There are two parameters where the headphone actually excels, even in my opinion. The first one are transients. If you have a good recorded drum set, if you have a good recorded triangle or piano or whatever, where transients play a role, you will become aware of the quality of the principle rather immediately. And the second thing is that room information, three-dimensionality of a room, depends a little bit on the distance between the oar and the diaphragm, of course, but the overall phase linearity and transient quality of the speakers translates into a three-dimensional quality that we often enough hear from the customer to say, yes, it is there. It is different from most of the competition. May I, as I'm speaking and reading at the time here, make a short remark to Class D amplifiers. I know that Class D amplifiers have a bad history, especially within the audio community, due to the fact that the first Class D amplifiers were difficult and shrill and different. I may mention that in 1975, with some friends, I made one, if not the first real audio Class D amplifier, and I was taking part of this development for some time, then lost it. But meanwhile, Class D amplifiers, from the technical and musical point of view, are totally in competition with the best Class A and whatever is running on the high-end audio market. They have really experienced a huge development, and a number of brilliant engineers have changed the Class D quality from the ground. I just want to mention that Class D is a bad amplifier is an old story, and the new story is quite different. Thank you.
Yeah, and to probably go back to the question before, so I would also think that well-recorded acoustic music is something where you can really learn about the qualities of the headphone, the stereo imaging, the depth of the room. even the smallest, that's always fascinating for me, how you can follow up with things like delays and reverb tails in detail. It's a very fascinating experience for us still. And the other kind of musical genre that is currently seems very interested in the headphone is actually electronic music, modern electronic music that is very extended in the frequency range. It goes very, very low with sub bass material. We get a lot of interest from people in the EDM and drum and bass realm, which is quite fascinating for me to see, because this has been traditionally a group of producers that were interested in the things we did at Atom Audio as well. So there must be some sort of a relation, some sort of a bridge, and so yeah, I think modern music, modern electronic music, and acoustic-based music, until even orchestral music, classical music, where room information is really crucial for the listening experience.
May I add another comment here, please? When we do some new stuff and have to do listening tests, then it plays a role that both Frederik and me myself are at home with the classical music as well, that we have heard hundreds, if not thousands, of original concerts. And if you want to judge a transducer, be it a speaker or a headphone, then the comparison with the original sound, I think, should be the guideline. If you have electronic music or recorded, multi-channel recorded music, then to judge in most of the cases difficult. You can be impressed by this record, you can be impressed by that transducer, but who speaks the very truth, you will never know. And it helps, at least, to have natural acoustic events with instruments you are familiar with to judge whether this device is right or not right. And that's something I claim for the headphone, that they do the natural sound color and sound in a very good way. By comparing it with my own acoustic experience with instruments and orchestras to what the recording does. Yeah.
May I say that's exactly what the question was and what we needed to hear. And I'm going to ask us to take a break for exactly 5 minutes.
So I'm going to interject something before that break happens.
Okay.
So the speaker in and of itself not only is tunable by positioning, but is also gain structured so that you can adjust gains for personal preferences. So if you decide that you like a little more bass or subharmonics of some kind, you can adjust that into the system just by adjusting that gain. The crossover maintains good linearity. I don't hear any deficits that occur based on adjusting gain. Overall, the speaker has zero problem in basically any frequency group that you want. Unless you put it there, there is no particular spike or anything that might sound as though it's hollow where it has gone away. So the speaker in and of itself is really very good. I've been playing with tube preamplifiers, a lot of the audio research stuff recently on this, and the complement or the synergy that occurs with a tube front end on these amplifiers is actually very good. And there's no particular crunchiness because of the type of amplification they're using. So it doesn't seem to collapse in on itself. It seems to be very, very lenient in terms of putting out every frequency that exists on your source. And like I said, it's very easy to adjust for just about any particular space that you put it in. So that's my input before our break.
I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina. My name is Alex Didula, and I've had these heads for several months now, and they're one of the best headphones I've experienced in a long time. We have 20 some odd amplifiers and a dozen headphones, and everything from the high-end Bayer T1s, all the Sennheiser, 600, 650s, 800s, whatever, and have all types of amplifiers from 1 watt to 6 watts and higher, tubes and solid state, class A's, ABs, all that kind of stuff. And I've tried 20 some odd different amps, and these headphones, even though they're touted as being a little on the inefficient side, Yeah, 1 watt will do very nicely. You know, if you want to really have them come alive, you know, probably 2 to 3 watts, and much more than that, you're going to want to damage your hearing. So you've got to be really careful. The immediate thing I've noticed with these headphones, and I love Focal Clears and Utopias and Stellias, whatever, is the honesty in the music and the reproduction. When Klaus mentioned you use a live orchestra, or your association with acoustical instruments or instruments that you have heard and played for hundreds and thousands of hours, that to me is an acid test. Some folks want real bassy, boomy things. These aren't bassy, boomy headphones. Some people, you know, want certain things, a V signature, U-shaped signature, whatever. These to me are fairly neutral, and it's a very honest reproduction. And because they're so doggone fast, the minutia in the music, good or bad, it's all there. You hear things, you hear, drum swishes, the little tiny tings, and the discrete little things. You kind of say that, gee, that stuff is there, but I've never heard it before. Well, these cans, it's like that in spades. So they're a very, very nice set of headphones. The only negative complaints out of maybe 50 or 60 people that I've talked to have tried these is really the weight, of course. And of course, knowing that, you know, part of the design of the distance of the driver from your ear, from your eardrums, whatever, there is kind of necessary for that wonderful wide lateral sound stage that these produce, which adds to that realism of live, of being there. So it's kind of necessary, I guess. And the second thing is really the fit. You can see on my big fat head here, I don't use any extensions at all. So I didn't have any problem with the original or and this is the second version that I have here. But I do have several friends on some of the headphones.com sites and the HEDDphone sites that they love the sound, but they still have an issue with the fit. And they really, you know, just have a problem. And I don't know, even if it were the extensions were made another centimeter or two, even longer, if that would solve the problem or not. But I think for me, the way the weight distribution is on my head is almost perfect. I can wear these, and I do, 6 to 8 hours a day. And I have other very high dollar headphones here, and these are my daily drivers. They're really that good. So, and for the price, you know, they're making people that are making $3,000 and $4,000 headphones take a second look at their pricing structure. But so I kind of smiled when you mentioned about the pricing. You may have gotten it wrong. I think you got it right on the money, and you've made a lot of people nervous. So anyway, they're great for acoustic, great for orchestral. When you listen to some of the Diana Krall's, you know, live recordings of that, and some of the nightclub stuff, Eva Cassidy, you know, it melted in your mouth good. So you can close your eyes and you think you're there. So one other smaller negative thing is some people don't think the sound stage is as good front to back it is from side to side. I kind of agree with that, but again, it depends an awful lot of the recording itself. Is there a sound stage in the recording? Is it mic'd really well? And one of the things that come out from a world-class or top-of-the-line headphone is to be able to determine if that recording was really done well. So I can understand why recording folks that master this stuff, whatever, I can understand why they like these, because they're very, very honest and very revealing. If you do a lousy job, you're going to hear a lousy reproduction. So thanks to Freddie and Klaus. Please, one other comment from the headphone, I'm a headphone guy, and from the headphone guys that I talk to is, please don't let this technology get lost. I mean, you've got a great loudspeaker line, but the headphone folks are a strange group of guys out here and gals, and they're worried that this might be a flash in the pan and you're on back to your normal bread and butter. So we're hoping that these will stay out there, and maybe you could tweak some things here and there and whatever. So that's the message I'd like to relay.
And I'd like to say thanks for the review.
Yeah.
We did not, Dr. Knop, we did not expect a review from the East Coast, but we got one, and it was perfect. Hey, I've asked people to turn their video on. You don't have to if you don't want to, but it makes for a little better conversation when you can see who you're talking to, if that makes any sense. Okay, I do have a couple of other things I could throw in here. I think this may be from a competitor who wants to know how your business is running. But are the customer types for the headphone different from your speaker customers? In other words, consumers versus professionals?
Yeah, very much so. But I think that's due to the way we approached the markets, and I think in a while it will be better balanced. I mean, for the speakers, it's still like a 90% to 10% pros versus consumers. And for the headphones, I would say it's probably comparable, probably like 80% audiophiles and 20% pros. But this is about to get into a better balance just because we are just starting out in pro audio. One of the biggest magazines for this world is a magazine called Sound on Sound, which comes out in the UK and the US. And currently we are on the cover of the Sound on Sound issue, and there's a very, very good review in there. And you start to, more people start to realize that it could actually be a great tool for working on music, no matter what you do, if you're a mixer or a mastering engineer or just like to play music and record music. And so I think there will be quite some attention coming from that side as well, but it's very much a consumer high-end product until now in terms of perception and in terms of sales as well. Yeah.
And is there a migration to or from headphones or speaker lines? Or is it pretty even? You may have answered that earlier, but I thought I'd throw it in again.
Migration?
From your speaker line to your headphones, or from your headphones to your speaker line? Is there any cross-pollination there, do you think? Yeah,
very much so. Very much so. And that's obviously something we are observing very closely. I mean, especially now that we all feel, and I think my father would agree, that the worlds of consumer audio, the world of pro audio are much closer together than ever before. And I think the hi-fi world is more open-minded than ever before to actually look into active systems as well. And I personally come from the mastering process. So in the world of mastering, there are a lot of engineers who love certain iconic traditional passive speaker models, and like the B&H stuff, like, you know, a few other things. And this is very interesting for us to see, obviously. And then now the first dealers that we have that aren't specific headphone stores are naturally interested in what we do in terms of speakers as well. And that's, of course, something we have to push because it's very interesting for us. And consumer audio is a new topic for us, you know, in general.
This has to do with business in general, because you were talking about being mastering side. Not many recordings happening right now.
Yeah.
How has COVID affected your business?
Yeah. Well, one of the most obvious effects is that a lot of people are at home at the moment listening to music and making music. And that's definitely a you know, sarcastic. It's a good thing for the headphone and for selling headphones and making people interested in trying out different things. And then that's also something from the music production side. A lot of people work from home, and even on a commercially successful level, they work from their own home studios. They work from their bedroom studios. And then, of course, you would almost never find a proper acoustic treatment in these rooms. So people are relying on headphones to a certain extent as well, to be able to work with headphones. And I think that there's a general atmosphere at the moment. How far can you get with a headphone when you make music? Is a headphone always a compromise, something that you grab when you want to set like a low-cut filter or something in a music production process? Is it a tool that is not nice to have but necessary, or can it be something that probably doesn't replace a speaker, but that actually can take you quite a long way in the process of finishing a record and the process of mixing a record. And I think from the engineers that I know that use the headphones, they are very, very impressed and actually think it's surprised in the best possible way. And that's, of course, very good news for us. And I mean, just to close that, for us, this is the borders between the pro and consumer, that there are, you know, hardly to be seen anymore. It's from a technical point of view, that's very, very good news for us, because we're always looking for the same things. No matter if we create an active speaker or create the next headphone model, it's always, you know, about what my father pointed out. It's about accuracy. It's about making this stereo imaging right. It's about dynamics. It's things we seek in whatever product we do, you know. And so obviously we're interested in selling our headphones into different into these different realms as well as the speakers. It comes very natural for us.
One thing came in, which is a technical question. What's the rise time of the HEDD AMT unit versus other headphones?
The rise time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like slew rate.
Whoever, oh, Albert, put your mic on and you can talk about it.
Klaus, you have to turn on your microphone. Yeah.
I forgot to reinstall it, sorry. Technically, answer is rise time is a reciproc of the bandwidth. So two headphones who claim to have 30 or 40 kilohertz of bandwidth have the same rise time. So there will not be big differences. Rise time does make differences if the phase response is very different between two devices to be compared. However, all the headphones, especially the planars and our AMT, have no complex impedance. It's just like a resistor. And then my first answer is true. In the case of a resistive load, the rise time is a reciproc of the bandwidth. So it's very similar between the headphones under consideration.
Thank you. Kishore, you just arrived, and that was his question. So he's going to need to review the recording. So we're good. Okay.
Let me add one thing, please. Let me add one thing, a kind of amplification of what Frederik told you. The difference between pro audio and high-end or hi-fi is a question that has put to me very often, and I only can say, I don't know what pro audio sounds like and high-end sounds like. I think both groups do have the interest in an accurate reproduction, and it is astounding how they look at each other. If a sound engineer wants to tell you something about how awful a speaker is sounding, then he would say it sounds like hi-fi. So whatever that means. And if you see the all pro audio loudspeakers with all the mid-range problems they really had, then they shouldn't be very proud of themselves. All in all, we do not see that kind of difference. We think in good and bad products and not in pro audio or hi-fi products. Yeah.
Okay, let me open it up. Anybody wants to unmute and ask the question directly? That's an easy way to do it. Or if it gets very, very quiet and nobody says anything, then since our German guests are close past midnight already, it's time they can go home. Although Fred, you're in the office, so that doesn't count. So let's get in the last few questions, please, quick as you can.
Is there any possibility of a close back?
There is a possibility of closed back headphones, of course.
It would probably weigh a few 100 grams more.
Yeah, this is our very first headphones, and it will not be our very last one.
Outstanding. That's the right answer.
I have a question about your speakers. Could you just comment why you prefer active speakers to passive ones, and in particular to the AMT driver? Is there any particular advantage to an active powered AMT driver?
To the AM2, to what driver are you comparing it to? Sorry.
The AMT driver. Is there a particular advantage to using a powered active approach rather than a passive approach for that driver?
The question, of course, means, is the AMT more suited or less suited for an active speaker? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, the AMT presents a more harmless load to amplifiers compared to dome tweeters, for example. So whether this means they are more suited or less suited, I wouldn't say that. The quality, the sound quality, if you have a passive or active speaker using domes or AMTs, you will find the differences, and a dome tweeter will benefit from an active speaker design as well. So I could not automatically find a big difference there, no.
So then why do you, in general then, why do you favor active speaker systems over passive ones?
I have to first say that I, for decades, made passive speakers. I was really at home with passive speakers. Most of the time I was developing speakers. If you do a technical comparison between what kind of limitations a signal has to pass on its way from the preamp to the loudspeakers, then it's so much easier to make it active and have less limitations for the signal. The signal is limited in passive speakers by the nonlinearities of the capacitors and inductors. The damping factor between the amplifier and the drive units is destroyed by passive crossovers. You have a damping factor, but you have a good power amplifier between 500 and 1000, and it goes down to 10 or 20 if you have a passive crossover in between. Even if you have a Mundorf coil and capacitor, you can make the problem smaller, but still an active speaker that is directly coupled to the individual either tweeter or woofer has a much better control of what happens in the transducers compared to a passive crossover. So the starting points to make a better speaker is much more promising if you have reasonable electronics in place. The filter design you can do are steeper, are more exact, are more reproducible. So from an engineering point of view, an active system head has serious advantages.
Thank you.
I have a structural question about the actual drivers themselves in the headphone.
Yeah.
Some of the folks that I know that have these or have reviewed them, notice when they move their head from side to side, not violently, but just a little bit, you can kind of feel the elements actually moving, whatnot. And their concern or their question is, you know, thinking of warranty in the short term and the long term, are they going to break? You know, we're not talking violent movements, but you know, the creaking, you've documented that. I think we understand that. But structurally, in the Captain material, whatever, could you just comment on, you know, on the longevity and the strength of this material and that mounting mechanism?
I can, due to the fact that I do AMT tweeters like 25 years now. Mm-hmm. And using Kapton as the, technically speaking, most convincing folio. That it's a folio that's used in airplanes to be wrapped around the cables to avoid fire and humidity and everything. Kapton is a formidable device that has a huge elasticitätsfaktor. What is that in English?
Modulus of elasticity? Or?
Modulus, of course, Young's modulus is what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's totally resistive. It's non-aging. That's something DuPont claims, who do make the Kapton, and that's something I experienced for decades, that it is not at all sensitive to destruction or to elongation or things like that. We know, of course, the effect. If you shake your head, you will have some noise from the headphones. You will have some noise from planar headphones, by the way, as well. Yes. Due to the air volume that presses onto the diaphragm, you do have noises, but it is true for both the linear, the planners, the headphones and ours, that it does not destroy the thing, and there is no warranty problem for us in that case. We do not have to replace something. They will withstand the pain of time.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I could try to bait you into, you mentioned that this was your first headphone, but not your last. So having worked for IBM for 30 some odd years and knowing about, NDAs and not disclosing things, are we a lifetime away for the next one? Or are we talking, maybe 6-7 months, a year, or any little tidbits or hints? Frederik Freddie is smiling there.
If I wasn't that much disciplined as I actually am, I emotionally would have some answers for you, but it's actually too early. And again, we will come up not with just another variation. We have additional thoughts, additional innovative ideas. If they work out, you will know in the course of next year somehow.
Outstanding. Well, we wish you the very best.
Thank you.
Thanks.